We start the meeting, who are we gonna talk to?
We're talking to the internet presentation.
Judy's gonna ask some questions.
The
So,
speaker?
Judy's just gonna ask us her
There
questions.
are a couple of staff members who are on.
Oh, okay.
so I'm Judy Meyer, co-president of the League of Women Voters of Rensselaer County. And happy to be here this evening, even though it's a few people. And traditionally, Paul Hickok goes first with the budget presentation.
I have some information to pass out, but anyway. The budget this year is a little bit different in that we have had to add considerably to the staffing expense, the staffing lines. We have experienced, as many employers and many libraries have experienced, pretty high turnover in staff. And our turnover has been particularly high. We have had a number of changes throughout the year, probably due a bit to the pandemic and change in the labor market. With this in mind, we decided to take a look at our salaries and our salary schedule. And we discovered, based on comparisons with other libraries in our district and also other libraries of similar size in New York State, that we were quite a bit behind in the salaries that we were offering. So I set out to work on a new salary schedule that was more in keeping with or more similar to other libraries of our size. And again, most of that comparison with with libraries in the upstate area, and a lot of that comparison was with libraries in our own district, Rensselaer and Albany County. And so what I came up with is a new salary schedule, which would add considerably to the salary line. Yes. Yeah, basically that increases the salary line over last year by close to 100,000. Now, when we were looking around at some of the causes of the turnover here and the turnover in libraries in general, we also discovered that we're one of the few district libraries in New York State that is not part of the New York State retirement system. We have some people on our staff who are or have been members of the New York State retirement system, and of course, when you're recruiting staff, that is a major benefit that potential staff will consider before they will accept the job again. So we examined the idea of joining the New York State retirement system. We spoke with representatives, and we got some figures based on what it would cost to join next year. And that, again, that added about 95,000 to this budget. Now, there are some other expenses that we have to take into account. As you know, utility prices are going up. You know, book and material prices, of course, are going up, as are any number of other things. So those we had to account for. And when we got done, we're looking at a tax levy increase of approximately 16.7%. again, this is important to us, I think. We need to attract, good staff members. We need to attract staff members who can, provide the service the community needs. And we are having right now a great deal of difficulty doing that. I think that the increase to the salary lines and the joining of the New York State retirement system will help a great deal in recruiting the best possible staff. Anyway, that's about it.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks very much. So there are two board positions open, and two people who've been on the board have chosen to run for those positions. Kirsten Lorcher and Marie DeBasi. So I have a few questions. Just for the record, it's a 3-year position, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And you've both been on the board for a while, so the question is, do you recall what first drew you to being on the board? And what keeps you on the board? What keeps you engaged? Maybe start with Marie.
The year that I got on the board, there was a lot of concern about things that were being proposed at the library. And there were a group of people who decided that they were going to be more activists than they had been. And they supported me as a candidate. And I believe that there's a very special affection that so many of us have for libraries, regardless of where we came from and where we went to a library. I feel it's like ducklings imprinting on a mother. So it's just, everybody just seems to have this special feeling for libraries and how important they are. So that's certainly what keeps me here, is how important I feel this library is to our community. And I try to do things to support what I believe in.
Thank you, Marie. So this has been my first term on the board, and I've had, this is the first time I've really done public service in this way. And I have to really credit Marie for asking me if I'd like to be on the board and suggesting that that was a possibility. So that was the first time I'd run for a position, and the first time to be on the board. And it was really, I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't know what that would be like to do it. And I found this to be very satisfying to work for a higher, looking at a community service provider, a civic organization that provides service to the community, and an opportunity for me to contribute perhaps in a small way to that, and try and think about long-term vision and direction and planning, and perhaps to help out with some of the specific day-to-day issues, or to advise on them as they pertain to capital projects and building related issues, which is where my professional and personal background lies. And I found this to be a very satisfying experience, and a very collaborative experience, which I really appreciate. Thank you.
The second question, I'll start with you. In terms of what have you found the most difficult about being on the board?
The most challenging thing about the board is that there is so much to do. One could spend hours and hours per day working on this, and I would really love to be able to do more and be able to do more on a daily basis. There is so much that could be done. We'll have to prioritize and be very focused in my efforts. And I would love to say yes to everything.
And Marie,
I just want to say that one of the best things that I did was to recruit Kirsten as a board member. He's been invaluable. I think that what makes up a good library board is people who bring different skills to the table. And I think that Kirsten certainly has done that. It's been invaluable in helping us to move forward. So I agree that one would love to have unlimited time to devote to the library, particularly because I see the things that I do in other areas as contributing to my strength here on the library board. So the connections I make in other areas in the community are invaluable in working on the library board. And the other thing that's been a frustration is I've learned why people have difficulty keeping up their campaign promises. It's not so easy. There are things that you expect to be able to do that it ends up that you can't. You don't have the capacity. And that was an interesting learning experience for me. So that is something else that I encountered.
next question. What do you envision as the most likely gains for the library in the next couple of years? I can go back to you.
This library in particular, or libraries in general?
I was thinking of this library in particular. If there's particular projects that you're working on, that you expect to see progress on in the next couple of years.
I have my fingers crossed for air conditioning.
Don't we?
We all do.
Yes, there are a lot of people, a lot of support for that particular issue. And I found it interesting to see the changes that are occurring. For instance, I was an advocate for checking out books, having the capacity to check out books and machines that, probably cost over $10,000. And the next thing I know, there's an app on your phone that you can use to do that. And I like that. I like seeing the changes and our hotspots that are so popular. They're just the lucky people. When COVID hit, they got to keep those hotspots until the library reopened. It's just really exciting to see the advances that are made. Streaming, the Hoopla, Ancestry.com that we offer. I can't wait to see what's going to happen in the next couple of years.
Kirsten?
Well, I'd have to concur with Marie on that in many regards. The jumping into the deep end on the technology due to COVID restrictions really did, I think, push us to do some new things that I think have provided some new opportunities and perhaps some things that will carry forward that have been positive. But then the traditional bread and butter things like being comfortable in a space, having adequate ventilation, having temperature that one can control, whether it be heating or cooling. Thanks to grant writing that Maria has really led the charge on, and working with consultants on that, I think we are developing a plan. And now we're also developing some opportunities for some financing, hopefully, fingers crossed that some of these things will come through to be able to make some real physical improvements to space that will provide greater greater opportunity for community access. There have been days where the libraries had to close because of high heat in the past, and hopefully we'll be able to get ahead of that in the near future. Thank you.
And
Yes,
Kirsten didn't mention that he was involved in the grant writing as well. And it
But
couldn't,
Marie led the charge on that.
couldn't have been done without him, because he had the skills, he had the
I'm
skills.
hearing mutual endorsement.
We can afford to do that. There were only the two of us running, that were no need to be competitive.
Well, Kirsten, so what are the remaining greatest challenges for the library? And what might be some possible strategies for tackling?
Well, there are always physical challenges of space and buildings. And those can be weighed and compared, and there are many different avenues and different approaches one could take. But one of the real challenges is getting financing to do those things. The library, the state does not have a robust system in place for supporting libraries in financing for projects, nor in many other aspects of what the library does. The library relies on our local taxpayers for the bulk of our funding, and we want to be able to provide services to the community that are a benefit to the community, but that are also affordable for the community. And there are many different ways that things can be done, and so we want to find ways that are appropriate to this civic organization in our community. And then we can talk about how or what gets done. That's the financing is really a tough nut.
And Marie, your take on that?
Well, I certainly think that's true. Our Troy has a poverty level of close to 25%. So, and there's a double-edged sword to that. That means we have a population that's very much in need of all the services that the library can provide. And yet it's also, the community doesn't necessarily have huge capacity to afford what we'd like to see. One of the things I'd like to see is more community integration for library services than currently exists. We tend to focus mainly on what we do here, where I think that services can be provided anywhere. They don't have to be limited by a building.
Well, that was another question on the
Uh-oh.
list, which is, how do you think other ways the library might increase its community, engaging more of the community support and recognition? What do you think?
I find lots of times people don't know what we offer. So today, I happened to run into somebody that was trying to get a museum pass, and they actually showed up at the library that I happened to be at to find out, whether they could get a museum pass. Didn't know to look it up online to see who might have them available, whether this particular library even lent them to other than the specific residents that are just for that particular library. So, and the person was pretty young, so lots of times people say, oh, I wish. And it's something we do, and they just don't know it. The ancestry, just all the services that we have. We need to get out the word more. I've talked to adults who have said to me, oh, the library doesn't do anything. And then they have kids. And suddenly the library is wonderful. So particularly when people think there's not a need for libraries because of the internet, I think we really have to work harder at informing them of what the library has to offer and why it's so important. to all of us.
Kirsten, you would like to add to that?
I think I could offer that the technology does offer a wealth of opportunity. There are many more digital platforms, many more digital lines of communication than there have ever been in the past, which then is a challenge then as an organization to figure out how to strategically use these different means of communication and to reach an audience. Because the audience on the other side is really receiving so much information that it's difficult for them to sort through it. And so the question then becomes, how do we reach out strategically? And then how do we provide access to our resources? How do we let people know what is available, how they find it? It's not just come in and use a card catalog anymore. So that's the challenge, to figure out how to effectively use digital communication, the internet, etc., to connect with people who know us and people who don't know us yet.
I wonder, what's your own experience using the library? Let's see, go back to starting with you.
Let's see. I have been resident here for over 30 years. My children have grown up here. We've lived down the street from the library. Certainly, when our children were young, we spent much time at the library. The opportunity for them to come and pick the books that they wanted and then take them home and be able to read them together was wonderful. As an architect, I've also spent a lot of time enjoying the built environment here in Troy and spend time in the building and outside the building, looking at the unique environment. I grew up in a 1960s era suburbia, white clapboard houses, pretty cookie cutter type things that are not inspiring, were not inspiring to me at the time and don't inspire me terribly today either. But to come into the library was and remains an event for me. A lovely place to be, and then to have the opportunity to gather with people here, to do events of mutual explorations is a wonderful opportunity, and whether it's planned or whether it's casual.
Marie, your personal involvement with the library?
I try and take advantage of any opportunity to utilize the services of the library. So as a board member, I can have the experience of what it's like to use it as a resident. So I tend to also not buy books as a result, because I feel I should use the library. Plus, I was saying to someone earlier, I read the books that I have to return versus the ones I buy. So that's another incentive. So most everything here, I've used at some point or another. I've used our Troy room. I've attended programs. I have used all the different media. So, hardcover books, ebooks, audiobooks, CDs. I used to take out a lot of CDs to listen to. I've streamed over Hoopla. Magazines, I love magazines. I always loved going in and reading all the magazines. So I'm big on hard copy magazines. Use of reference library. In fact, when I written some of the grants we talked about. I used the reference librarians to find some, some statistics that we submitted as part of our grant application. And I encourage other people to do that. When they say, oh, I can't, you know, I'm having trouble with the computer, I encourage them to come in and use the library as well. And I try to provide feedback on my experience in doing so. So yes, I've made wide use of the library and many libraries, not just this one.
Well, is there anything else that you'd like to add in closing?
I'll say that I'm daunted by the cost. I think so. We recently were looking at our stained glass. We were fortunate to have the timing of the HSR, that it was done just before like ARPA and the downtown revitalization initiative became. So we were very well positioned. But we have some stained glass that we would like to see repaired up in the ley lights. And just that small amount is, how much was it? 55,000, Paul? Just,
Yeah.
and you know, to do all the ley lights would have been close to 200,000. And we have lots more stained glass. So just, it's just so much money that's needed for that. You may ask,
You know,
what?
I have to add that I talk to a lot of contractors and, you know, almost every time they look at something like the ley lights or look at something else, it's, well, you know, it's at the end of its life.
Well, 125 years old, but you know, my house is older than that. And you know what? Those windows still are good. They just need to be restored. And I'm told that the replacement windows don't last that long, 20 years. But yeah, it is daunting. And even the newer libraries are doing rehab and everything. It's just, and you may ask why I think so much in terms of grants and trying to find financing for the building. It's because the library staff does such a great job on getting the grants for services. You know, they really get funding from everywhere they can. So, but they don't have the time to do everything. So that allows us to help out by pursuing other funding sources that they don't have the opportunity to work on.
Kirsten?
I didn't make any prepared remarks for closing, but for me, the library is a civic organization, a place for the public. I think, Marie, you've used the term the third place. Many people have a home, many people have work, but where do people go where they can gather with a few people or with a larger group of people in public, indoors? There aren't many of those places in Troy. And so the library is one of those few places in Troy where the public is welcome to come in and spend time together, whether as a group or with a book. And that is very special to me. My background is in the built environment, and so I'm happy to contribute perhaps a little bit toward maintaining this very special place here in Troy, these historic buildings that are part of the library. But the library buildings are there to support library services for the public. And so I feel it's important for me to contribute towards that civic space for this civic organization here in Troy. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we hope that the public will appreciate being able to hear from you recorded, since it's been recorded, which I think is the first time the forum has gotten recorded. So we're trying to get the word out so more people can hear from you. And they can appreciate what you do for the board and what all the board does for the library. And so, thank you all.
And certainly if they have feedback, we'd love to hear from them, both good and bad. It's important. And thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
As well as, let's remember, folks, the vote is Tuesday, September 20th, 12 to 8, at either the main library or the Lansingburg branch. You must be a registered voter and reside in the city of Troy.
Thank you.
And for those who couldn't come live tonight, this Thursday at the Lansingburg branch, 7 PM, there'll be another information session discussing the budget. Budget candidates. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay.
Fair warning.